Hello. So get ready for a Texas sized episode here because we're going to be talking about whether Texas could go blue. And no, I don't mean that they could freeze to death like they almost did recently, and Ted Cruz took a little vacay until he was sort of halted in his efforts. No, we're not talking about that kind of blue or Smurfs or anything like that. We're talking about, Democrats starting to dominate the state. Could that happen? Obviously, not everyone agrees that it's likely to happen, and it's not the best messaging to claim wins are inevitable anyway. If the Democrats are trying to say that. I think that if the Dems want to win in Texas, they have to find a balance between treating victory as inevitable and the idea that there is no chance of it happening. They might make the mistake of saying it's a solidly red state, so obviously it doesn't even pay to try. And I think they're actually doing that in other states, and that it's potentially having negative consequences for them. Some in Texas know it was a mistake electing Rick Perry, George W. Bush, and Hobby Lobby. Well, okay, that last one I just threw in there. Nobody elected Hobby Lobby, and they're not just Texas, but they are like a conservative company. And they sure seem to have made some inroads in these conservative states. But anyway, how is it even possible that somebody like Rick Perry or George W. Bush could be elected? On the bright side, now Rick Perry has gone into cryogenic storage in Franconia, and George W. Bush is a semi-retired rodeo clown who apparently spends a good deal of time down at his ranch, apparently making some artwork. And honestly, I've seen some of his paintings, and it's like something maybe he should have done instead of doing a lot of the stuff that he did do. But anyway, moving on from that, I do want to look at how the same frack and fossil fuel lobby that enriched and excused former Texas Governor Rick Perry is going to continue enriching and excusing other politicians. In fact, one wonders if a lot of these CEOs and lobbyists might have these politicians on speed dial, so to speak. Rick Perry was all about the natural gas pipelines and never wanted to expose the weaknesses or dangers of fracking or mining. Meanwhile, they're strawmanning the green energy boogeyman, complete with Trump claiming that windmills can cause cancer and that, oh dear, those spinning windmill blades can end up chopping up those poor birds. Of course, fossil fuels are not known for harming wildlife at all, and apparently they're part of how we'll replenish and rewild nature and, have our great national triumph by using all these dinosaur remains. Okay, alright. But really, no matter how unfair it is, the Tea Partiers, the corporate-funded politicians, the dark money big oil lackeys, and the lackeys for neocolonialism will work hard to make us forget that there is no planet B. Excuse me, I kind of had to burp there. I just ate a bagel. So, anyway, where was I? These corporate activists are really just playing a long game, assuming that they can cajole voters into rewarding them for a century of selfishness. Oh, and they'll do all this under the cover of religion, freedom, and family values, the perverted Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty and, American Pie, maybe baseball, if that's still a thing, I don't know. All those, the American Eagle is going to be flying around as they do all this shit. It's going to be... it's going to be fluttering and flapping its wings, and hopefully it'll stay away from those frickin' windmills, right? I mean, that's like a perfect crime. You don't want those precious American Eagles getting chopped up by those windmills. God damn. That's like sacrilege right there. So basically the Republicans are going to say, let us pray before we can pray. That's like two different pray versions, Pray and then Prey. See what I did right there? It's kind of a clever thing. So I would like to thank the people of Texas for giving us some of this shit. And I would like to think that they're smarter than this and that they get some of these critiques, but I don't know. I this is one of those times where I basically just have to make fun of a state. And sure, I could do the same thing about California or Florida or Michigan or whatever, but today we're going to look at Texas. We don't need to solely look at Texas, though, to remember that things are looking rather grim. Right-wingers still have millions of Americans convinced that the biggest threats we face come from across the border. Some immigrants looking for some crappy jobs, somehow they have this immense sway over the economy and our lives and all that kind of stuff, like magic. They crack the whip and make the economy function somehow. It's like it's a delusion. And it doesn't matter if the average immigrant family has not cost them or their families a single penny more than anyone else out there has. The immigrant bashers and right-wingers have become the permanent normal. And it's rather stupid. I get tired of it. So on that note, I have something to say to any right-wingers out there who are listening. Now, maybe if your state is such a poor state that it can't handle an occasional immigrant, maybe it's too small or too weak to support a viable government or a viable economy. Do you not understand how, if you're blaming the immigrants, you're actually confessing that your own society is too weak to actually, function under even minimal stress? Like you're actually saying that your whole economic worldview is weak. But really, the immigrant bashing stuff is another long-running effort by the ultra-rich to divide and conquer, pitting some of the poorest and most vulnerable among us against people who have even less power. Also, if your primary focus is on wicked immigrants, then you won't even notice how bad government is and how governance makes a profound impact on their own lives and your life. These immigrant bashers will think all the shitty things are somehow the fault of immigrants and other scapegoated groups, So maybe, just maybe, the right-wingers want us to forget this part of Texas history as well. It was actually built on the backs of slaves. That's a fact, It's not critical race theory. It's a fact. In fact, according to the Texas State Historical Association, quote, after statehood in antebellum Texas, slavery grew even more rapidly. The census of 1850 reported 58,161 slaves, 27.4% of the people in Texas, and the census of 1860 enumerated 182,566 slaves. That was 30.2% of the total population. So slaves are increasing faster than the population as a whole in Texas. But, I guess we're supposed to overlook that bit of history because it makes white people feel uncomfortable and all that kind of stuff. Like they've decided to say over in Florida. And, maybe Texas has never quite recovered from the Mexican-American War. Or how about the Civil War? If we look at U.S. history, we see that it was once a patchwork quilt of settlers battling it out with various forces. You had Mexicans who did not like non-Spanish speaking immigrants as well at the time. And in fact, even to this day, some Mexicans actually do believe in the Reconquista idea of reunifying all those old territories back into Mexico. So, I mean, it's like a mirror version of what, some people do with American territorialism. They're like, oh, we have, we have to dominate this territory. So it's almost like they're fighting the mirror images of themselves in a way. It's rather interesting. So anyway, moving on. Maybe people could set aside a lot of this nationalistic bullshit, set aside the territorialism, as lives are short anyway. Why focus on that nonsense? And just live and let live to the extent possible. And it actually often is more possible than some people out there make it out to be. And that would certainly be allowed and encouraged by a global economy that is actually free. Frankly, I don't think we'll get there until all of these places stop putting stupid greed heads in charge and they start valuing lives and freedom over money and bullshit prejudices and wacky expansionist beliefs. So anyway, that's probably going to be like a part one of my rant about Texas. And I'm sure I might have annoyed some people out there, might have outright pissed you off, but oh well, it's a free country. I can say what I want, right? And like I said again, I don't just have to pick on Texas. Maybe someday I'll pick on some other states. I live in Michigan. There are definitely some flaws over here too. But right now we're looking at Texas. So anyway, have a good day. Bye-bye.